Hey guys! Today I want to talk about short sales. A short sale is when a seller needs to sell their house, but owes more on it than market value or what they can sell it for. And in this case, they would not have enough money to pay off the loan. Some sellers are kind of in a bind and must sell right now because they can no longer make the monthly payment. These are a lot more common and still common after the housing market crashed several years ago. Because of this, the sellers are now in danger of the bank foreclosing on them, which is an experience you should try to avoid. We're actually going to talk about foreclosures in future videos. With the bank's permission, a seller can sometimes sell short, hence short sale. And that means that they're selling for less than what they owe on the house. This process becomes a lot more complicated when the seller has multiple loans, and so more banks have to be involved in the process. Most of the time, having to navigate this is extremely complicated, and there's several things you should know before choosing to participate in the process when you're a buyer wanting to buy a home that's a short sale. Another thing to know is, as the seller of the short sale, your credit is going to take a hit for going through this process. But it is good to know that your credit won't take nearly as big of a hit for a short sale as it would for a foreclosure. And just for context, if you don't know what a foreclosure is when the bank forecloses on the mortgage or the trust deed and seizes the home from the homeowner. And then the bank owns the home. Some things to know as the buyer of a short sale before wanting to buy a short sale, just so you're aware of what's involved. Yes, you are buying the home from a financially distressed seller, but when you buy the home and purchase it, the money you use is not going to the seller, it's going to the lender. The lender in this case is the bank that the seller took a mortgage out from. And you can see why the process becomes more and more complicated if the seller has multiple loans from different lenders or different banks. So the seller will get nothing. All proceeds from the sale will go to the lender. And then since the lender did not get all of the money that is owed on the home because it sold short, they can then decide what to do with the difference. The lender can decide to forgive what's short, or they will get a deficiency judgment against the seller. And this would require the borrower or the seller to pay either a portion of or all of the deficiency, the difference between the property's actual market value and its short sale price. Where are the benefits in a short sale? The buyer of the home is definitely benefited because they're purchasing a home for less than its value. So they're getting a pretty good discount on that piece of property. For the seller, yes, they lost their home. It can be a really stressful process, but they are now partially free of the debt that was with it. As for the lender, this is the last step before a foreclosure takes place, which is something no bank wants to deal with. Okay, the timeline on a short sale is way different than any normal residential transaction, especially if multiple lenders are involved. Short sales can take from a couple months to even like 6 months or longer, depending on all of the people involved. Patience as a buyer is a must if you're getting involved in something like this, because there could be situations where a month or months could go by and no progress at all is made. And it can be super frustrating. So that's definitely something to be aware of that is not necessarily a rarity in a situation like this. As the buyer, you are at the mercy of the lender and their response time, unfortunately. And it's good to know denial is a strong possibility when working with a short sale for the buyer. You as the buyer could put in an offer and wait months and months and months, and then ultimately after waiting this long period of time, you're denied your offer, which again can be really frustrating. Not as frustrating if you know that it's a possibility beforehand. Okay, with a short sale, the home is being sold as is. So this means it's very different from a normal home transaction. With a traditional sale, there is an inspection usually done beforehand, and then the buyer can renegotiate with the seller about the findings of the inspection, and they can work that into the contract. This is not the case with a short sale, unfortunately. Since the bank is already losing money on this transaction, they are not willing to negotiate further. This means that, as the buyer, when you purchase a home, you are buying the home in its as-is condition. As-is condition means that the buyer is taking on full financial responsibility of any repairs that are needed. In addition to repairs on the property, sometimes short sales will stipulate that the buyer is also responsible for any liens or judgments against the property. As the buyer, it is in your best interest to have a title search done on the property beforehand so that you know what, if any, extra financial obligations buying the home will entail. Okay, as the buyer, you've got to be prepared for when the lender gives the clear to close on the home. When purchasing a home, a buyer must be pre-approved, not pre-qualified, and be ready to close with all the necessary funds when the lender finally gives their approval. And if you want to know more about the difference between being pre-qualified and pre-approved, you can check out my video that I did a couple weeks ago on qualifying for a mortgage loan. So that will be in the link below. Once the lender gives the clear to close, there is often a very short time period for the closing to take place, so be prepared as the buyer. And there you go, there are some basics about buying a short sale home. Definitely more complicated than a normal transaction. If you do decide to purchase a short sale at all ever, just know your stuff and you'll have a really good idea of what to expect. So next week we are talking about foreclosures, and I'll see you guys then.